The alien ship dropped out of hyperspace above Earth like a falling star. It was massive, bigger than any human-made structure, its hull gleaming silver against the black of space. Admiral Zexathara stood on the bridge, his forearms crossed behind his back. His species had ruled space for 10,000 years, but now they were dying. The Vraktar swarm had eaten half the galaxy. Entire worlds stripped bare, their populations consumed or turned into mindless drones. Every military force sent against them had failed. The Federation's greatest armies were dust. Their most brilliant strategies had crumbled. Time was running out. Earth hung below them, blue and green and seemingly peaceful. Intelligence reports said the humans had been at war for their entire recorded history. Zexathara found this hard to believe. The planet looked so calm. Colonel Jake Murphy sat in the Pentagon briefing room, studying the alien delegation through tired eyes. 3 different species sat across from him: the tall, four-armed hegemony admiral, a crystalline being that spoke through musical tones, something that looked like a walking tree but smelled of ozone and fear. "You want our help," Murphy said. It wasn't a question. Admiral Zexathara nodded. "The Vraktar swarm threatens all life in this galaxy. We have lost billions of soldiers, hundreds of worlds. Our fleets are scattered, our defenses broken." Dr. Lisa Carter leaned forward. She was Earth's top military strategist, a woman who had studied every human conflict from the ancient world to the recent Third World War. "Tell us about their tactics." The tree-like alien rustled its leaves nervously. "They attack in waves. Millions of warriors, each the size of your largest vehicles. They show no fear of death. Their weapons are biological, grown from their own bodies. They consume everything they defeat." "What have you tried against them?" Murphy asked. "Honorable warfare," Zexathara replied proudly. "Fleet engagements in open space. Ground campaigns with clear objectives. We follow the Galactic War codes, minimal civilian casualties. Preservation of infrastructure. Protection of non-combatants." Murphy and Carter exchanged a look. Carter cleared her throat. "And these codes, are the Vraktar following them too?" The crystalline being chimed sadly. "The swarm knows no honor. They attack hospitals, schools, nurseries. They turn children into weapons. They poison water supplies. Its musical voice trailed off. Murphy stood up slowly. He walked to the window and stared out at the Washington skyline. Buildings that had been rebuilt 3 times in his lifetime, each time after humanity had torn itself apart and started over. "You want soldiers," he said without turning around. "Yes," Zexathara replied eagerly. "Your species has a reputation for warfare. We offer advanced technology, membership in the Federation, access to—" Murphy held up one hand. The alien fell silent. "We stopped being soldiers a long time ago," Murphy said quietly. "After the Second World War, we learned something important. Nice guys finish last. Honorable warriors die young. The only rule in real war is that there are no rules." Dr. Carter pulled out a tablet and began showing the aliens footage. The burning of Atlanta, Dresden after the bombing, Hiroshima, the siege of Stalingrad, chemical weapons in the trenches of France, the killing fields of Cambodia. "This is what humans do to each other," she said calmly. "Over territory, over resources, over ideas. We've spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing our own species." Zexathara watched the images, his face growing pale. "But surely you have evolved beyond such brutality." Murphy laughed, but there was no humor in it. 3 months ago, we ended the Third World War. 47 nations involved. 800 million dead. We used weapons that make your worst nightmares look like children's toys. "Why are you telling us this?" the tree being asked. Carter closed the tablet. "Because you need to understand what you're asking for. You want us to fight something that terrifies you, something that eats worlds, but you want us to do it nicely. With honor. With rules." Murphy turned back to face them. "The Vraktar don't follow your rules." "Why should we?" "Because it is civilized," Zexathara protested. "Because there are standards of conduct. Because some things are simply wrong." "Wrong?" Murphy's voice was soft, dangerous. "Tell that to the billions of people they've eaten. Tell that to the worlds they've stripped bare." The room fell silent. The aliens shifted uncomfortably. They had come seeking warriors to join their noble cause. Instead, they were looking at something else entirely. Dr. Carter spoke into the silence. "We'll help you, but on our terms." "What terms?" the crystalline being asked nervously. "Complete tactical autonomy," Murphy said. "We fight the way we know how to fight. No interference. No suggestions. No war crimes tribunals afterward. That is, difficult to accept, Zexathara said slowly. Carter smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Admiral, let me ask you something. In your 10,000 years of civilization, have you ever faced extinction? No, but we have, 7 times in recorded history. Asteroids, supervolcanoes, ice ages, plague, nuclear war, climate change, solar flares. Each time we survived. Do you know how? The aliens waited by doing whatever it took, by becoming more dangerous than the thing trying to kill us. Murphy sat back down. You have a choice, Admiral. You can keep fighting your honorable war and lose everything, or you can unleash us and win ugly. But at what cost? The tree being whispered. That's not your problem anymore, Murphy replied. The cost is on us. The blood is on our hands. You just get to keep existing. Sexthera was quiet for a long moment. His species had ruled space through diplomacy and honor. They had built a civilization based on mutual respect and cooperation. Now they were facing extinction. If we agree to this, he said finally, what guarantee do we have that you won't turn on us afterward? Murphy shrugged. None. But right now your choice is between maybe dying later or definitely dying now. The Admiral looked at his companions. The crystalline being chimed softly in what might have been agreement. The tree thing rustled its leaves in resignation. Very well, Sexthera said. Complete tactical autonomy. But I pray to the ancient gods that we do not regret this decision. Dr. Carter gathered up her files. Admiral, you're about to learn why humans have survived everything the universe has thrown at us. We don't fight fair. We don't fight clean. We fight to win. As the aliens prepared to leave, Murphy called out to them. One more thing. When this is over, don't thank us. And don't ever ask us to do it again. The delegation left Earth that day carrying humanity's agreement to help. But they also carried a growing dread about what they had just set in motion. The galaxy had called for soldiers. Humans were sending annihilators. Captain Roy Bennett stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the Corvana system burn. 3 years of Federation warfare had reduced once beautiful worlds to scarred battlefields. The Vraktar had dug in like ticks, impossible to remove. Captain, Federation Command is requesting we join their defensive line around Corvana Prime, reported Lieutenant Amy Stone. His communications officer. Bennett didn't take his eyes off the tactical display. Red dots swarmed across the screen like angry insects. Millions of Vraktar warriors held the outer planets. The Federation fleet huddled around the homeworld, barely holding on. Tell them we'll establish our own position, Bennett said calmly. In the ship's war room, his senior staff gathered around a holographic map. Combat engineer Samantha Wells traced defensive lines with her finger. Demolitions expert Pete Jackson studied supply routes. Dr. Nina Brooks, their psychological warfare specialist, made notes about enemy behavior patterns. Federation doctrine says we should reinforce their weakest flank, Wells said. Bennett shook his head. Federation doctrine is why they've been losing for 3 years. We do this the human way. Which is? Asked Jackson. We study the enemy. We find their weakness. Then we break them completely. For 72 hours, human forces didn't fire a single shot. They watched. They listened. They analyzed every Vraktar transmission, every attack pattern, every defensive position. The Federation commanders sent angry messages demanding action. Bennett ignored them all. Dr. Brooks was the first to spot the pattern. Captain, the Vraktar aren't just warriors. They're a true hive mind. But look at this, she pointed to intercepted communications. The different broods compete with each other. They're not perfectly united. Interesting, Bennett mused. What else? Pete Jackson had been studying the enemy positions. They're protecting something on Corvana 4. Heavy defenses but not military installations. Looks like nurseries? Breeding grounds, Wells added. The intelligence reports mention that Vraktar reproduce in cycles. If we're lucky, this might be their spawning season. Bennett smiled coldly. Then we know where to hit first. The first human strike came at midnight, ship's time. Lieutenant Commander Frank Torres led 3 stealth ships through the asteroid belt around Corvana 4. They didn't attack the Vraktar defenders. Instead, they released chemical weapons into the atmosphere above the nurseries. The chemicals wouldn't kill the adult Vraktar, but they would make the young ones sick. Very sick. Within hours, panic spread through the Vraktar ranks. The hive mind screamed in confusion as thousands of larvae began dying. Warriors abandoned their positions to protect the nurseries. The careful defensive lines cracked. Now we hit them where it hurts, Bennett ordered. Sergeant Kelly Adams led the second wave. Her transport ships broadcasted Federation surrender signals, claiming to carry refugees from the outer worlds. The Vraktar, sensing victory, allowed them to approach. The ships were full of bombs. The explosions tore through 3 major Vraktar staging areas. But that wasn't the worst part. The bombs contained recorded human voices, screaming, crying, begging for mercy, the sounds humans made when they were afraid. Dr. Brooks monitored the enemy communications as the psychological attack hit home. The Vraktar hive mind had never experienced fear like this. They were predators used to their prey running or fighting. They weren't ready for prey that screamed in such perfectly orchestrated terror. "It's working," Brooks reported. "Their coordination is breaking down. The different broods are starting to blame each other for the losses." The third strike was the cruelest. Captain Danny Morrison's fleet didn't attack military targets. They hit the water processing plants that the Vraktar had built on captured worlds. But they didn't destroy them. They poisoned them. The poison wouldn't kill Vraktar immediately. It would make them weak, sick, unable to fight effectively, and it would spread through their shared feeding systems, affecting entire broods. Federation observers watched in growing horror. Admiral Keksoth sent urgent messages to Earth demanding explanations. "These are war crimes," the message read. "Attacking non-combatants, using chemical weapons, targeting civilian infrastructure. This violates every galactic convention." Bennett read the message aloud to his staff. They all laughed. "Non-combatants?" Wells asked. "The Vraktar are a hive mind. Every individual is a combatant." "Chemical weapons?" Jackson added. "They're the ones who use biological warfare. We're just returning the favor." Dr. Brooks was studying the latest intelligence reports. "Captain, it's working better than we expected. 3 Vraktar broods have started fighting each other. They think the poisoning is sabotage from rival queens." "Excellent," Bennett said. "Time for Phase 4. Phase 4 was simple. Human forces began broadcasting on all Vraktar frequencies, but they weren't sending threats or demands. They were sending Earth's history, footage of the Black Death killing 1/3 of Europe, the Mongols building pyramids of skulls, Roman soldiers crucifying rebels along every road, Vikings burning monasteries full of monks, Spanish conquistadors feeding prisoners to their dogs. "We want you to understand what you're fighting," Bennett's voice said over the broadcasts. "We've been doing this to our own species for thousands of years. What do you think we'll do to you?" The psychological effect was devastating. The Vraktar had conquered hundreds of worlds, but they'd never encountered a species that documented its own atrocities so carefully. The hive mind recoiled in something like disgust. Within a week, Vraktar forces began withdrawing from Corvana 4, then 5, then 6. They pulled back to defensive positions around the gas giant Corvana 7, trying to regroup. Bennett gave them 3 days to settle in. Then he showed them what human creativity could really accomplish. The attack came from inside the gas giant itself. Human engineers had seeded the planet's atmosphere with microscopic machines. At Bennett's signal, they activated. The machines didn't explode. They didn't poison anything. They just made noise. Horrible, terrifying noise that resonated through the gas giant's core and broadcast directly into the Vraktar hive network. The sound of human children crying, for their parents, for help, for mercy that would never come. The Vraktar broke. They didn't retreat in good order. They didn't fall back to secondary positions. They ran. The entire swarm fled the Corvana system in panic, abandoning equipment, wounded warriors, everything. Admiral Keksoth arrived on the Retribution 3 days later. His face was pale with shock. "How?" he asked Bennett. "How did you defeat them in 2 weeks when we couldn't manage it in 3 years?" Bennett looked at the tactical display, now showing green across all 7 worlds of the system. "You fought them like soldiers, honor, rules, objectives. And you?" "We fought them like humans. We found what they loved and killed it. We found what they feared and became it. We turned their own nature against them." Keksoth was quiet for a long moment. "The other Federation commanders are calling your methods horrific, barbaric." "Probably," Bennett agreed. "But effective. What happens now?" Bennett turned to face the alien admiral. "Now we do it again. And again. Until they're all gone or too scared to fight." The Federation had asked for soldiers to fight the Vraktar. Instead, they got predators who understood that the only rule in war was winning, and the Vraktar were beginning to learn what it meant to be prey. Ambassador Claire Phillips walked into the Federation tribunal with her head held high. The great hall was packed with representatives from 300 worlds, all staring at her with expressions ranging from disgust to terror. The charges against humanity filled 7 data screens. War crimes, read Speaker Vexandra, her crystalline voice ringing through the chamber. Use of chemical weapons against civilian populations. Attacks on non-military infrastructure. Psychological torture of prisoners. The deliberate targeting of reproduction centers. Phillips waited until the litany of accusations ended. Then she stood and activated her own display screen. "These are the worlds the Vraktar have consumed," she said calmly. Images flashed across the screen. Empty planets stripped of all life, cities reduced to organic paste, billions of sentient beings reduced to nutrients for the swarm. Before humans joined this war, you lost an average of 2 worlds per month. Since we began operations, the Vraktar have retreated from 17 systems. The Federation has not lost a single world in the past 6 weeks. A hegemony admiral rose from his seat. "At what cost? You have turned warfare into butchery." Philip smiled coldly. "Admiral, how many of your own children have died in this war?" "That is not relevant." 12 million, Phillips interrupted, reading from her notes. 12 million young hegemony citizens dead in 3 years of honorable warfare. How many human children have died fighting the Vraktar? Silence. "None," she continued. "Because we don't send children to die in pointless charges against superior enemies. We send nightmares." Across the galaxy, General Marcus Stone was implementing those nightmares. His command ship, the Devastation, hung in orbit above New Cyprus, the latest world to request human protection. The planet's surface crawled with Vraktar infiltrators who had been spreading their corruption for months. "Begin Doctrine Scorched Earth," Stone ordered. Major Ashley Kumar's orbital bombardment fleet didn't target military installations. They targeted the fungal networks the Vraktar used to communicate with their home broods. They hit the processing plants where captured civilians were turned into food. They destroyed the breeding pools where new warriors were grown. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Sean Hayes, "Federation Command is protesting our target selection. They say we're destroying civilian infrastructure." Stone laughed bitterly. "Civilian? The Vraktar turned this entire world into a factory for producing warriors and food. There are no civilians here anymore." Captain Danny Morrison's fleet hung in the outer system waiting. His ships didn't look like normal warships. They looked like refugee transports, medical vessels, cargo haulers. When the Vraktar reinforcement fleet arrived, they ignored Morrison's ships completely. That was their last mistake. Morrison's disguised vessels opened fire with weapons the Federation had never seen. Stellar manipulation devices that could destabilize a sun, weaponize black holes contained in magnetic bottles, kinetic kill vehicles that could crack a planet's crust. "Target their command ships first," Morrison ordered. "Then their troop transports? Save the escape pods for last." His communications officer, Lieutenant Tracy Coleman, looked uncomfortable. "Sir, shouldn't we accept their surrender?" Morrison shook his head. "They don't take prisoners. Neither do we." The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the entire Vraktar reinforcement fleet was debris floating in space. Not a single enemy survived. On Earth, Dr. Alex Reed was making a discovery that would change how the galaxy viewed humanity. In his laboratory, he studied genetic samples from dozens of species. The pattern was clear and disturbing. "We're alone," he told the research committee. "Every other intelligent species in the galaxy evolved from prey animals, herbivores, scavengers, pack animals that survived by hiding or running." Professor Janet Wright leaned forward. "What does that mean?" Reed pulled up a holographic display of human evolution. "We evolved from persistence hunters, predators that ran our prey to death across vast distances. We're the only species in the galaxy that evolved to kill large, dangerous animals with primitive tools. So we're literally wired differently than everyone else. Our brains are designed to track, trap, and kill things that are bigger and stronger than we are. That's why their tactics don't work against the Vraktar. They're trying to fight a hive-mind predator with prey animal thinking." The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just different from the other Federation species. They were fundamentally alien. Back in Vraktar space, something unprecedented was happening. The Queen, an ancient being who had lived for 10,000 years, was experiencing fear. Her massive form pulsed with bioluminescent displays of confusion and terror. Never in her long existence had she encountered prey that fought like predators. The humans didn't just resist being consumed. They actively hunted her children. Report, she commanded her war leaders through the hive network. The response was fragmented, panicked. 3 broods had been completely eliminated. 7 more were in full retreat. The humans had done something to the nurseries on Corvana 4 that was still killing larvae weeks later. They had turned entire star systems into death traps. But worst of all, the humans had done something to the hive mind itself. The queen could feel it like a virus in her thoughts. Fear, doubt, the terrible possibility that she might lose. Her greatest war leader, a creature that had consumed the hearts of 1 million enemies, sent a message that chilled her to the core. Great Mother, they are not like the others. They do not fear death. They do not seek honor. They seek only our extinction. Ambassador Phillips finished her testimony before the tribunal with a simple question. You called us monsters. But monsters are what you needed. The Vraktar don't understand mercy. They don't respond to diplomacy. They only understand strength and fear. Speaker Vex Andra's crystalline form flickered with uncertainty, but surely there must be limits. Rules of engagement, some line that cannot be crossed. Phillips looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives, beings from hundreds of worlds all shaped by evolution into prey animals, all thinking like prey animals, all failing to understand what they were really fighting. The only line, she said quietly, is the line between existence and extinction. You crossed it the day you asked for our help. She walked out of the tribunal to the sound of horrified silence. 3 days later, the Federation received word that 2 more Vraktar hive clusters had surrendered without fighting. The human fleet hadn't even arrived yet. The Vraktar were surrendering to the idea of fighting humans. General Stone read the reports with grim satisfaction. They're learning, he told his staff. Finally, they're starting to understand what they're dealing with. What's that, sir? Asked Major Kumar. Stone looked out at the stars, where human fleets were spreading across the galaxy like a plague of nightmares. They're learning that there are things in this universe worse than being eaten, he said. There's being hunted by something that enjoys it. The galaxy had wanted soldiers to save them from the Vraktar. Instead, they got predators who were teaching an ancient hive mind what it meant to be prey. And the lesson was just beginning. The message reached Earth at exactly 1427, Greenwich Mean Time on a Tuesday that would be remembered as the day humanity showed the galaxy what true warfare looked like. Admiral Beth Taylor read the report 3 times before she believed it. The Vraktar had found Earth. A massive swarm fleet had bypassed all outer defenses and struck directly at humanity's homeworld. 12 billion people, gone in 6 hours. Earth was a lifeless rock now, its surface covered in the organic resin the Vraktar used to process biological matter. The planet that had given birth to the galaxy's most feared warriors was now a feeding ground for their enemies. Taylor stood in the command center of Luna Base, watching the tactical display with cold fury. Around her, staff officers waited for orders. They had all seen the footage from Earth's final moments. They had all lost everything. Sir, said Commander Luke Harrison, his voice steady despite the tears on his face. What are your orders? Taylor was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her desk and pulled out a sealed envelope marked with biometric, locks and classified so far above top secret that most governments didn't know it existed. I'm implementing protocol extinction, she said calmly. The room fell silent. Even the hardened veterans of humanity's military had never heard those words spoken aloud. Protocol extinction wasn't just a military strategy. It was humanity's final answer to any threat that managed to destroy their homeworld. It had been written during the Third World War by strategists who understood that sometimes survival required becoming something worse than your enemies. Sir, Harrison said carefully, protocol extinction has never been tested. The psychological profile suggests that even human troops might refuse to carry out some of those orders. Taylor looked at him with eyes that had gone completely dead. Commander, they killed our children. They ate our grandparents. They turned the birthplace of our species into food. She activated her command codes and began transmitting orders to every human fleet in the galaxy. Find every Vraktar hive world, she ordered. Find every nursery, every breeding ground, every place they've ever built a nest. Then burn it all. Don't just kill the warriors. Kill the eggs. Kill the larvae. Kill the queens. Kill everything that has ever been or ever could be Vraktar. Protocol extinction was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It wasn't warfare. It was extermination on an industrial scale. Engineer Tracy Coleman led the first wave. Her ships carried weapons that hadn't been used since humanity's darkest hours. Bioweapons specifically designed to unravel Vraktar genetics. Viral agents that would spread through their hive networks like wildfire. Nanotech that could rewrite DNA at the molecular level. Target the breeding worlds first, Coleman ordered. If we can stop them from reproducing, the rest will follow. Captain Greg Foster's Psychological Warfare Division had moved beyond simple fear tactics. They had studied every aspect of Vraktar society, every weakness in their collective consciousness. Now they weaponized that knowledge. Broadcast this on all Vraktar frequencies, Foster commanded. His ships began transmitting humanity's complete military history. Not just the wars, but the genocide, the systematic extermination campaigns, the times when humans had decided that entire populations needed to cease existing, the Holocaust, the Armenian genocide, the killing fields of Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia, 1,000 smaller massacres scattered across human history. We want them to understand, Foster explained to his horrified communications staff. This isn't anger. This isn't revenge. This is what we do to species we decide don't deserve to exist. Commander Harrison led the deep strike missions into the heart of Vraktar space. His orders were simple. Find the ancient hive worlds where the first queens had spawned, and sterilize them completely. Sir, reported Lieutenant Kate Morgan, we're detecting massive population centers on Vraktar Prime. Billions of civilians. Harrison didn't hesitate. Fire everything. The planet cracked under the assault. Kinetic weapons traveling at significant fractions of light speed punched through the crust and into the core. The resulting explosion could be seen from 3 systems away. Billions of Vraktar died in seconds. But that wasn't enough for protocol extinction. Human engineers released self-replicating machines into the debris field. The machines would consume every atom of organic matter and broadcast the destruction on all frequencies. Any Vraktar who found the system would see what happened to their birth world and know that humans were responsible. Dr. Rachel Adams, working from a secure facility on Mars, had developed the most horrifying weapon of all, a complete understanding of Vraktar consciousness. The hive mind isn't just a communication network, she explained to the research team. It's their entire sense of self. Individual Vraktar don't exist as separate beings. They're more like cells in a larger organism. What does that mean for us? Asked Dr. Steve Parker. Adams smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression anyone in the room had ever seen. It means we can make them kill themselves. The psychic warfare program began broadcasting directly into the Vraktar hive network. Not words or images, but pure human consciousness. The experience of being individual, of being alone, of having to make decisions without the comfort of collective thought. The effect was devastating. Across Vraktar space, individual warriors began breaking away from the hive mind. But they weren't becoming independent. They were going insane. Creatures that had never existed as individuals couldn't handle the isolation. They turned on their own broods, attacking anything that moved. The ancient queen felt her empire dissolving. Hive worlds were going silent one by one, not conquered or destroyed, but simply gone. Entire star systems were becoming dead zones where nothing lived. She tried to flee deeper into unknown space, but the humans had anticipated this. Captain Morrison's hunter-killer fleets were waiting in the void between galaxies, ships designed not to fight but to track, to follow, to ensure that nothing escaped. Great Mother, her last surviving war leader, transmitted, "They are not trying to defeat us. They are trying to erase us from existence itself." The Queen finally understood what she was facing. These weren't just predators. They were something worse. They were a species that had learned to commit genocide so efficiently that they could eliminate an entire galactic civilization without losing sleep over it. In the command center on Luna Base, Admiral Taylor watched the tactical display as red dots disappeared one by one. Each dot represented millions of Vraktar, entire worlds, ancient cultures that had existed for thousands of years. "Sir," reported Commander Harrison, "Vraktar resistance is collapsing. The few surviving hives are requesting negotiation." Taylor didn't even look up from her reports. There will be no negotiations. No prisoners. No survivors. They wanted to eat our world. Now they learn what happens when humans decide something doesn't deserve to exist. Protocol extinction lasted 4 months. When it was over, the Vraktar were gone. Not defeated, not scattered, gone. Their worlds were lifeless rocks. Their history was deleted from every database. Their very name would be forbidden in most civilized systems. Humanity had committed genocide on a galactic scale and documented every moment of it. The Federation watched in horror as their saviors revealed what they truly were. Not heroes, not even soldiers. They were apex predators who had learned to industrialize extinction, and they were very, very good at it. The galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the last Vraktar died screaming in the void between stars, the galaxy was learning to live with its new reality. Humanity had not just won the war. They had rewritten the rules of existence itself. Colonel Tony Mitchell stood on the observation deck of Fort Annihilation, humanity's newest military base orbiting the former Federation capital world of New Horizon. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see the planet's surface dotted with human installations, defense grids, monitoring stations, weapons platforms that could crack a moon. "Colonel," said Lieutenant Sarah Ward, approaching with a datapad, "the hegemony delegation has arrived for the security briefing." Mitchell nodded without taking his eyes off the planet below. "Send them to conference room 7, the one with the wall display." Room 7 was designed specifically for meetings with alien dignitaries. The walls showed a rotating display of human military achievements. Not propaganda, just facts. The destruction of Vraktar Prime, the systematic elimination of 47 hive worlds, the complete erasure of a species that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. Admiral Zexathara entered the room flanked by 2 bodyguards, though everyone present knew the guards were useless. If humans wanted him dead, no amount of protection would matter. His 4 arms trembled slightly as he took his seat. "Colonel Mitchell," Zexathara began formally, "the hegemony wishes to discuss the terms of our continued cooperation." Mitchell finally turned away from the display. "There are no terms, Admiral. There is only reality. The reality is that humanity now provides security for this galaxy. The reality is that anyone who threatens galactic peace will face human intervention. But surely there must be some form of oversight, some council or tribunal to— No." Mitchell's voice was flat, final. "We tried oversight. We tried tribunals. Your people spent 3 years debating war crimes while the Vraktar ate worlds. Never again." President Helen Davis addressed the Galactic Council 3 days later. The great chamber that had once held representatives from thousands of worlds now seated barely 300. The rest had been consumed by the Vraktar, or abandoned their worlds rather than face humanity's protection methods. "Fellow beings," Davis began, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall, "6 months ago you faced extinction. Today you are safe. This safety comes with a price." She activated a holographic display showing human fleet positions throughout the galaxy. Red dots marked the locations of military bases, monitoring stations, and response fleets. The coverage was total. "The Terra Doctrine is simple," Davis continued. "Any species that threatens galactic peace will face immediate human response. We will not negotiate. We will not seek diplomatic solutions. We will eliminate the threat completely and permanently." A crystalline representative chimed nervously, "Madam President, what defines a threat to galactic peace?" Davis smiled, and every being in the chamber felt their blood chill. "We do." The vote was unanimous. Every surviving species agreed to the Terra Doctrine. They had seen what humans did to existential threats. Dr. Rachel Adams finished her report on the war in a secure facility on humanity's new capital world, New Terra. The planet had been chosen specifically for its defensive advantages: asteroid fields that could hide entire fleets, a star system with multiple choke points, and enough space for the industrial complexes humanity would need to maintain galactic peace. "Conclusion," she dictated to her computer. "The Vraktar War demonstrated that humanity occupies a unique position in galactic civilization. We are not the heroes of this story. We are the solution to a problem that required apex predators to solve." She paused, reviewing footage from the final battles. Entire star systems reduced to rubble. Billions of sentient beings erased from existence. Genocide committed with industrial efficiency. The galaxy called for soldiers, she continued, but soldiers would have failed. They needed something else. They needed a species that could look at an existential threat and respond with complete, methodical extermination. Her report would be classified for the next 1,000 years. But its conclusions would shape human policy for generations. They were not protectors in any traditional sense. They were predators who had learned to hunt on a galactic scale. Admiral Jake Murphy, now Supreme Commander of Galactic Defense Forces, stood on the bridge of the Inevitability, humanity's newest and most terrifying warship. The vessel was less a ship than a mobile extinction event, capable of sterilizing entire solar systems if necessary. "Sir," reported Captain Linda Ross, "we're receiving a distress call from the Antares system. The Zular Empire has begun aggressive expansion again." Murphy studied the tactical display. The Zular had been testing human resolve for weeks, pushing into neutral space and threatening smaller species. They apparently thought humanity was too busy rebuilding to notice. They were about to learn otherwise. "How many worlds has the Zular Empire conquered?" Murphy asked calmly. "3 systems, sir. Approximately 15 billion casualties." Murphy nodded. "Implement protocol correction." Protocol correction was humanity's response to species that needed to be taught a lesson, but didn't require complete extinction. It was almost gentle compared to what they had done to the Vraktar. The Zular Empire ceased to exist in 18 hours. Not destroyed, simply corrected. Their government was eliminated. Their military was disbanded. Their conquered worlds were liberated. The surviving Zular population was relocated to a single world under human supervision. The message to the rest of the galaxy was clear. This was what happened to minor threats. Anyone could imagine what would happen to major ones. A young officer approached Murphy as the operation concluded. Ensign Kevin Clark had just graduated from the new Galactic Defense Academy, where human military tactics were now taught to select alien species. "Sir," Clark asked, "do you think we'll ever face another threat like the Vraktar?" Murphy looked out at the stars where human fleets patrolled silently through the darkness. Somewhere out there might be another species that thought it could threaten galactic peace. Another hive mind or machine intelligence or cosmic horror that needed to be reminded of its place. "Let them come," he said quietly. "The universe has learned what humans do to existential threats. We don't defeat them. We don't conquer them. We erase them from existence itself." He turned to face the young officer. The galaxy wanted protectors. Instead, they got something that makes other monsters afraid to show themselves. Clark nodded, understanding. This was what humanity had become. Not the galaxy's heroes, but its enforcers. Not the good guys, but the necessary ones. In the depths of space, automated monitoring stations recorded every transmission, tracked every ship movement, analyzed every potential threat. The galaxy was safe now, protected by a species that had turned extinction into an art form. Peace reigned among the stars, enforced by the promise of absolute annihilation for anyone foolish enough to disturb it. The galaxy had called for soldiers. Humans had answered with annihilators. And the universe would never forget the lesson. There are things in the darkness between stars that are more terrifying than any monster. Things that hunt other hunters. Things that have learned to kill on a scale that reduces entire civilizations to cautionary tales. Humanity had become the apex predator of a galaxy full of prey animals, and they were very, very good at their job. The new galactic order was simple: behave or cease to exist. Most species chose to behave. The few that didn't simply ceased.